if the chevron survives now, or
This is your generator?
no, just the like chevron resilient card that Ernestine was talking about.
Oh.
Because they read the chevron just had, and they think we can straight run.
Maybe. Let me see. luck, y'all. Have fun.
Thank you.
Format.
Don't sit there. What? Just think where you can sit up there if you want.
When I ditched you all at camp, you all were almost too fast. Just want to let you know.
Well, I'm sick, so I'm just gonna be slow today.
Perfect. Problem solved. I'm sorry you're feeling poor though.
Yeah.
You all ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I got this email from the wiki.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yep.
Sweet. Alright, I just sent out the one I see. Yeah, it's. Alright, is anyone not ready?
No, I'm just done with it. Alright, okay.
Alright. Is anyone not ready?
Contention one is disease. Trump's proposed public charge will drive millions out of health insurance. Rules of Bomb 18. The administrator's policy shifted to disincentivize enrollment. Children affected lead to the parents to pull eligible children out of Medicaid. The tailor the latest estimates put the Harvard loss between 2.1 and 4.9 million legal immigrants would have a dramatic impact on access to healthcare and the overall stability of the healthcare system. And outbreaks are structurally inevitable. Rosenberg 17. Ebola, SARS, Zika, MERS, flu, widely lost of fever, Marburg, Riffelli, and the whole pathogens can never be eradicated. With mobility, population pressures, and climate change, we'll see more. But early detection can disrupt the chain of transmission. Extensive coverage is key. Peterson 14. Hospitals around the U.S. routinely report infectious disease diagnosis to the CDC. Once it spots clusters or outbreaks, it communicates with local networks and agencies to trace the origin and find treatments if the sick and do not report for diagnosis. The entire system is rendered ineffective. Decades of research has shown a lack of health insurance equals worse outcomes because patients wait longer to present early identification, treatment, or critical lack of assessment, isolation, and quarantine will allow the disease to spread unchecked. And pandemics risk extinction. Millen and Snyder, BD 17. Historically, disease are responsible for the greatest death. Those skeptics think unlikely to spread in remote populations over time. Genetic resistances and evaded detection, countermeasures, and blood sugar pressures. These arguments do not rule out species going extinct. There are historical examples of human populations being wiped out. Many diseases are proof of each or takes attribute can be realized independently. Biotech combines such traits, and even conservative models find out despite low probability, society still ought invest in preventing extreme security catastrophes. And burnout doesn't apply to the U.S. Bar M16. Address of transportation to find to escape local extinction. There is a point at which the entire host population dies with increasing global transportation. Human civilization approaching such a critical threshold. Physical evidence is not a good guide to deep about the transition to extinction is inside even after even a system that seems stable can be destabilized by a few more long-range connections close to the tipping point. The U.S. have a highly connected super spreaders outbreak pose a much greater risk to prove unstoppable. And disease turns war. Equivalence 10. Pandemics pose direct threats to stability, undermine international peacekeeping. China, India, and Russia, which possess nuclear weapons and sovereign internal security challenges aggravated by epidemic political instability could degrade. Contention 2 is hospitals. RSOs are on the brink. Beer 19. Voters in rural America offer bringing endorsement of Medicaid lifeline for struggling rural hospitals. More than 5% closed since 2010, and many more face challenges. The latest expansion efforts will help stabilize. And the new interpretation threatens to do them in uncompensated care and labor shortages. With 18. The administration of public charge of rural hospitals increasing uncompensated care, particularly at evidence making up an increasing share, even a relatively small drop in income can have an outsized impact. Hospitals, the largest and second largest employer, there are often ripple effects and other unintended consequences. Physicians from immigrant backgrounds make up an important component of healthcare access, and communities are counting on evidence to meet shortages. This could be another deterrent, and closure drives rural flight, resulting in bad resource management. Calu 14. Rural infrastructure resolve our information crisis and imbalances with the cities that negatively impact sustainability and explain the unprecedented growth of salt many moderate as a result of attractions to overpopulation, bring about the decay and depopulation, excess labor, increasing unemployment, and social challenges of the area, bumps density, its carrying capacity of farmlands that are sacrificed to housing developments. And four megacities need the U.S. to create a workable model. Taylor 15. Urbanization provides opportunity to demonstrate leadership and transform the world. Megacities pose a threat to sustainable development, density, exactly the cost of the environment, scarce water and energy. Social concerns that arise from rapid population growth, economic inequality, and living conditions. One megacity holds lessons for cities everywhere, considered both as an laboratory for solutions and a mechanism for adaptation. Strategies that work leads to higher qualities of life, temporary unemployment, and meet demand in a way that doesn't harm the environment. And bad megacities collapse, but good megacities can solve innovation, which is an impact filter. Group 17. Rural cities will absorb 35 billion tons of resources every year. Their existence will depend on the balance between resource and growth. Global sustainability will be won or lost in cities, and they are where human minds are joining to your knowledge and craft solutions to challenges we face. Poorly conceived solutions land to the metropolis and plan and deeper trouble forms of increasing urban vulnerability include geotectonic forces of governance failure, civic unrest, of war, pandemic disease, and pollution, and machine and intelligence and nanoscience, war planning, increase the risk of disasters, and megacity collapse guarantees global conflict. Group 16. Food, water, and energy crisis constitute a major threat to densely inhabited regions. Megacity collapse would inevitably send shockwaves around the planet in the form of refugees, soaring food prices, shortages, and economic impact. The world with several in coming decades. And unsustainable megacities incite eco-terrorism, and Cordova 13. Megacities cause severe water stress. It is critical to observe an association between need for water and national security, referred to as eco-terrorism, but for environmental and political reasons, terrorism can cause harm to the population. And extinction from designer bugs, nanobots, or AI drones, Taurus, and Reef 17. Weapon etymology can wipe out humans. Eco-terrorists may find non-biotech weapons attractive to self-replicating nanobots. Target Homo sapiens of release their major urban centers could initiate an unstoppable human extinction event. Eco-terrorists could also discharge a deadly horde of AI drones in megacities to destroy society. And independently robust rural-urban balance solves the impact of nuclear warfare. So 3. America's cities concentrated spatially atomic disasters would affect too many people and industrial sites. The most effective was decentralization. America speckled by evenly distributed towns. A city wasn't made to order target urbanization furnishes a rough index of vulnerability to the atomic bomb. Space was the best defense. Central cities were inviting targets. This whole time to reduce nuclear survivability, a sufficient number would live through a disaster and rapidly deconstruct. That's the plan. The United States program should substantially reduce its restrictions on the legal immigration of individuals who are likely to use non-cash public benefits. Solvency. The plan reverses recent changes to the Foreign Affairs Manual. It spills over Monarch 19. Local governments have thrown their support behind the City of Baltimore's lawsuit fighting the Department of State's new guidance for the FAM allows consular officers to weigh public assistance of any kind by expanding the definition to include non-cash programs such as Medicaid. The administration is deterring families from participating. Guidance represents an attempt to fear confusion. DHS published a corresponding proposed rule last year, and guidance is already being used to exclude thousands of migrants. Anderson 19. Trump administration visa policies have led to potential evidence unable to enter American analysis of new data shows that ineligibility findings increased 39% between FY 2017 and FY 2018. Largest increase in denials was on public charge grounds. FAM is the most logical explanation as significant impact indicates how dramatically the DHS rule may affect these numbers. Grounds for refusal of FY 2017, FY 2018 public charge 3,237, 13,450. And new regulations amend broad suspicion of social services. Armis 18. Policy feeds into a climate of uncertainty or prowling onto the suspicion that social service departments have some ulterior motives. They are afraid it may put a target on the back of symptom of the hysterical overreaction caused by media, and empirics prove that individuals will resort to avoiding unrestricted programs in 2018. In the aftermath of welfare reform in the 90s, 9 citizens were confused about benefits. The problem became so drastic in this case, changes are much more sweeping. The direct effect of immigrants avoiding unrestricted programs will be larger. Only a complete reversal solves confusion and mistrust. News 19. For entities that serve immigrants, trust is key. Public charge expansion wouldn't retroactively affect families, but people are afraid it's very confusing and wonky, hard to convey what the change would actually mean. Even though you say this won't be held against you, people say, well, I don't know if I can believe that. And scenario analysis is pedagogically valuable, enhances creativity, deconstructs cognitive biases, and enables the creation of alternative futures. Bomber 16. The code of relevance has been limited. Strikingly little attention is paid to techniques that scenario analysis can immerse decision makers in future states that go beyond conventional extrapolations in the art of juxtaposing current trends and combinations to technically surprising impossible alternate worlds, scenarios of individual make out of conventional thinking, imagining alternate worlds of destruction, analytical process enables policymakers to envision something altogether different from the known present scenario analysis can, though to sharply drop really get pressing questions in international affairs, scenarios are really forward-looking, identify questions of great and variable pertinent to those do not appear in existing research programs, participants learn strategies for avoiding failures of creativity, and for overturning the assumption that it prevents cause and errors from anticipating and understanding.
Cool. Ready?
Yeah, different browsers.
One second. Alright. Good?
Yep.
What evidence says that rural areas now will develop into megacities?
It's not that rural areas develop into megacities, but rather that people are going to flee rural cities once these hospitals break down.
Yeah, but if people don't flee, then what evidence says that those rural areas will create megacities?
You're just misunderstanding the advantage. The
No, I'm
argument is
misunderstanding the uniqueness for the advantage. What's the uniqueness?
the argument is that if infrastructure breaks down in rural communities, people who are in rural communities move to urban areas.
So where do the megacities develop? And then what will be after?
No, the argument is that the megacities exist. A megacity is just a city with more than 10 million people.
Okay.
People move to the megacities, and then they become unsustainable, so they can't.
So the app is about making existing megacities unsustainable.
Right, sure.
Okay. How does the app solve labor shortages?
The argument is that rural nurses can only work, or will only be willing to work in low-paying support positions if they have access to healthcare.
Right, but your evidence says that labor shortages exist now. How does the app solve labor shortages?
No. Our evidence says that labor shortages exist, but rural hospitals are fine. Exacerbating them would be bad.
Okay, so how does the app solve uncompensated care? Which is the other turtle into your second advantage.
Because when people don't have health insurance, the EMTALA provisions mean.
Yeah, but the app doesn't give them health insurance. The app gives them
No. There are people who have health insurance now who will be forced to disenroll.
who have health insurance now that will be forced to disenroll.
Millions of people. The Rosenbaum evidence estimates 4.9 million.
Right, but the same amount of money is going into the Medicaid program. So rural hospitals are still receiving the same amount of money.
That's not true.
So all the money that the federal government is spending on Medicaid, people disenroll in the program, where does that money go?
The distribution of Medicaid funding is dependent on the individual receiving care. Like, that's how all insurance regimes work. If there's a bunch of people that are kicked off of Medicaid who continue to receive care, the hospitals have to pay for it, but they don't get compensation.
That's fine. Has Trump's proposed public charge rule been enacted yet?
Not the proposed one, but the plan doesn't affect that. The plan affects the FAM, the Foreign Affairs Manual, which has been enacted.
Alright, but does the plan then prevent Trump from implementing it?
But that prevents the proposed rule from being implemented in the future.
So the app does affect the proposed rule?
It does, but it's an effect, not a mandate of the plan.
What immigrant is going to delay going to the doctor if they have potentially a deadly life-threatening disease?
The Peterson evidence is like citing a literature consensus that indicates that when people have less insurance, they're less likely to present during the early
but that's in
stages
the
of
context
disease.
of chronic illnesses. It's not in the context
It's
of
not in the
deadly
context of
disease,
chronic.
like
It's not in the context of chronic illnesses.
Why would an immigrant who is potentially a disease that could wipe out everyone on the planet
The Peterson
delay going to
card.
the doctor?
The Peterson card is entirely integrated. It's our internal link to early detection, and it substantiates that they'll delay seeking care.
Right, but again, your Peterson card is not about a potentially extinction-level pandemic.
Yes,
What
it
evidence-
is. Yes, it is.
Your Peterson card is about
Yes.
an extinction-level pandemic.
Yes.
But, so you're saying that immigrants, well, actually, never mind.
Alright, let's talk about that.
Seven off, and then disease.
Yeah.
Disease, hospitals, and then salt.
Where's this? Yeah, where's
Did everyone get it?
Ready for You're good.
First off, topic healthy restrictions are qualitative or quantitative. Toxicity restrictions only limited to first qualitative restrictions. Qualitative number. Second qualitative restrictions. People that come to terms not look at your season to for responsibility for the United States legal immigration is admission will cost legal immigration department allowing the first legal permanent residence. Second immigration is done something authorized for for short periods of time. Reduce means to decrease in quantity and reduce that as meeting to intervention of order another breakdown in quantity vote for limits and not extending topic including second regulations and arbitrary subsections limits core generics and devious and literature so some existing statutory restrictions. Next off is a counterplan. The United States executive branch maintain the current restrictions on public charge and revoke President Trump's proposed public charge rule. Next off is the infrastructure bipartisan passed now word of 46 what was taking the word on the massive for the rule of will be the policy and the responsibilities of members are remember that addressing the first one he's will be the only ones that Trump said be one of the easiest the only thing that Trump could do. Immigration causes partisan infighting using Peterson 18 the whole immigration there's a offensive satisfaction of all the church not courts of other the body of hearings let's return the Jews all the middle of the and because that's no protections be for everyone security and immigration by taking all the pressure that each complete must pass legislation infrastructure solves act shortages spills over globally GHI 17 like the work that's I think is that it takes from the infrastructure gives the organization is critical is critical for the opportunity to get that each person will the handle most of the definition operations great massive construction that negative security rules always are you know the more disruption that is as global markets reduce what's around so losses that escalates every hotspot Calisto 17 the US is nice with the around the operations Russia and China's rather than the ability to factor the level who's always the same option to the release advancement is your defense aggregation the relation of John Shop Bolton total up to the purchase from purchase 20% US after one which go by 2.5 the ability situation very global was that food security health trade and all civil region that big terms of relations for the world security. Next up is the counterplan text. The United States Attorney General should issue a binding opinion that restrictions on legal immigration of individuals who are likely to use non-cash public benefits should be eliminated. It solves Shaw 17 the nation will not that the president this described decision making actually the respect of receiving more staff that education and any accommodation to the unique rules appear to adjudicate the results in any in the opportunity national power of the spirit of Holy and less treatment less than political force of the north of the ages after that actually the political part of the legislature the city legislature which the political finance keep the president in check. Next off is the base test and hard immigration policies retain Trump's base the affluence like Hillary immigration Trump's administration if this legislation transformation series getting the support of Trump's for immigration advice numbers of members for being united global immigration could take the all democratic 80% of Republicans for immigration Trump's immigration policy just for 90% German Senate and like category immigration is global mother's bill for the base that there's been evidence dips in base support instigated by immigration drive Trump diversionary lash out extinction Oppenheimer's 19 must be nipples immigration policy media health Trump's next to the rally based by having that could become irresistible, we can depend on the rational or unwanted behavior, aggressive provocation will present action will be space over the life of a president of an ironic president of a professional person I Chinese believe the direct launch that could as good I don't want to be a Russian Russian like that among multiple favor don't be obvious for the obviously kids will university and is the opportunity from agenda obviously be able to hardly revise the charity and destroy escalation. Next off is the Chevron references a classic of the gender precedent that sustains the doctrine Kim Sabina a good line change of Chevron natural language that begins the north was for the age of the doctrine of all the narrow circumstances from which under which order all the about a job made right after the organization resulted in a change of significant act to this signal the growing transportation calls make the northern places in neighborhoods agencies as well as no good knowledge to be a additional control to the statutory tax wheels additional discretion action of the official morally versus a relation for the larger application of national rights received from money power than a larger administrative a project constrained discretion deference upholds net neutrality repeal May 18 use of no appeals on the SEC to rely on that a shepherd after the SEC reverse and repeal in the contrary or receive the SEC more than not the short a shepherd the court permission on regulars on review that interpretation will receive definitely take another truth there's only reports to say enough the mobile bounce it's my welcome to all these revision shepherd we're sitting net neutrality decimates tech leadership shepherd check the 14.17 leadership by the world global innovation looking at obviously it's still in the check New Zealand support our looking foundation for the existing business and world active knowledge to start the business general for investment and a global leadership for architect failed to back over wrote digital combatants and rabbits for cyber innovation reach the public the extinction in first 17 leadership has been important for the hard part of the budget document by the design of national security elements of the part of the BCD a good size are costly from the others the technology that was remotely as well as the trial space a committed control defend the of it cyber capabilities for the numbers which control infrastructure today detecting by violent police so it's a devastating attack innovation and fundamental capitals rapid efficient attack the equals and national security and national might artificial mass stability track forces that IT become by procedure evidence attack by unravel security is forbidden innovation this less the international order be up and next off is a counterplan the 50 states should establish a single payer for health insurance for citizens and residents that eliminates co-payments and deductibles and uses a global operational or global operating budget to pay providers solves rural hospitals Stanley 18 universal doctors include the AC and rural relations insurance and less financial next to the opulence the rest of them especially hard time finding purchase a single insurance contract, minimum after tax, related to the issue of cash for hospital insurance, risk president, expect 30 million for insurance, higher describe the market, retro clear, a single payer solves disease con 17, no formal care, and the national security, health, having a large factor of population remain, uninsured remain, uninsured population, people living seeking health, busy, originally given less check and failed to get, again, for nature, for the large problems, deadly infectious diseases, new future not being able to smallpox, highly communicable, but it's not, in the victims delay, I try to get currency, setting with pandemic market, pandemic, disease. Section 212 Geo means that the risk of the app is zero, allows Trump to deny application for no reason and not disclose why will insert the chart to demonstrate the magnitude of society, subsection Anderson 19, uses of N, suspect the process of PPs against the court's final system data. It is used when there's a request to make hospital office or other office or when the office against the image and hospital process is terminated on property use when they do not want to tell the applicant the reason for the denial of the refusal to begin the most likely company to receive request for further evidence makes the hospital application of fair opportunity to provide present countervailing evidence for these visa denials. The U.S. isn't the only place where people get diseases. They started developing nations, China, India, etc. And no disease. Basic health measures, burnout and resilience. Adults 17 and 16. Human resilience. I think back to 30. American therapy practicing the lighting PDI. Nutrition really give her defense the blood. I should have contagion the old chicken. I very much the cartel transmission with every disease. Also the genetic variation of the various infection and adaptation of a large proportion of humans are evolving. The app basically the app requires basically ideal implementation of the ACA to solve this advantage. 20C Peterson 14 part of the ACA depends on without the insurance health can be an affordable or acceptable how the implementation of the affordable care possibly impact homeland security no matter the possible impact of ACA implementation. It also double turns the second advantage if rural hospitals are on the brink that an influx of immigrants would increase hospital usage and war turns disease undermines public health and infrastructure. Hospitals. Eco-terrorists are a bunch of hippies bombing chemical plants. They're not really going to escalate toward a nuclear escalation, and there's no reason why world like causes megacities have bad resource management. They just increase funding and the anger is exaggerated. No fundamental trade-offs can't be resolved. That's 15. If it's worth the find good, the efficiency of the efficiency of our time. I'm going to repel by adding knowledge and the trade-off of resource would be better. No reason to the reality based. It's entertainment. I watch these distracting parallel active largely exaggerated. All their evidence talks about maintaining the status quo. They don't cause rural areas to develop into megacities, or they have proper resource usage and lost of all causes to rural flight, urban perceptions, and the sort of different characteristics about the urban areas. Insert this re-highlighting. Megacities aren't an impact filter. They take centuries to reach levels where the collapse actually affected anybody, and U.S. megacities aren't either. Killer evidence never mentions. The U.S. mentioned Libya as another city model, and nuclear war causes extinction. Star 14, the world's leading countries including serious forces of the publisher, the power of the U.S. are small nuclear war because you got to catch up the destruction of the North market. Result. Assign zeros to the app, removing ground responsibility is not remove the grounds for deportation while 18. Also, they'll still fear Trump afterward and know that you can take it back. It was marked as public methods, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, so the advantage plans, the 50-state counterplan.
Yeah.
How does it solve for disease? You're just funneling a bunch of money into this, and it doesn't solve for like the early
it encourages people to go to the
It's
doctor.
the insurance. It's like a single payer insurance program. So the states would establish basically a way for people to go to the doctor without really having to pay very much. So it means if you're right about the insurance key stuff on the disease advantage, then this will definitely solve.
Does Chevron link to the AG and executive counterplan?
No.
It does not?
No.
Why not?
Because the AG is not like a sort of interpretation of executive, or rather of
The
legislative
AG
action.
is issuing a final opinion on what he thinks agencies
Does it result in the
should do,
plan?
but it is not interpretation of statute.
It's not resulting in that.
So how does it solve?
Well, it could result in something similar to the plan.
Does it result in the plan or not? Does it
depends
result in the
on-
elimination?
It depends on whether agencies comply with the AG or not.
Okay, well, do you think they will?
Will they?
They-
Well, agencies might acquiesce to the AG's
What does the
request,
counterplan
but
do to
it
solve
would
the
not-
case?
would not result in rulemaking. We will.
It's not result. It's not the same process. Yeah,
Okay.
Sure. The counterplans, status of the counterplans?
conditional.
Conditional, okay. The disease advantage. Why do we need ACA to implement the advantage?
So we recut the Peterson card, and this is like the abstract. It's talking about the efficacy of sort of the Affordable Care Act and whether or not it can help Homeland Security for disease preparedness. The problem is like the ACA was stripped and gutted under the
Okay,
Trump
so the
administration.
ACA is gutted, but why is that necessary for like early detection? We just need to get these Like.
But the point is you basically need like a universal health coverage if you want to solve this advantage. The thing is that doesn't exist. One, it only goes to public charges as per like topicality and like your plan. But also all of the ACA that provided sufficient insurance does not really exist in the same manner it did before.
Alright, sure. The infrastructure DA? Can you go over the link storage?
Yeah, public charge causes heated debates in Congress about
Specifically through the politicized notice.
Is the link as of the 1NC backlash to the executive?
Backlash to politicized
notice and
comments.
Backlash to notice and comment.
Yeah.
It's a politicized
You
notice
realize
and comment
the
procedure.
FAM
not
changes
backlash.
didn't go through notice and comment, right?
Which changes?
The FAM changes that the plan reverses didn't go through
I
notice
forget,
and
there's the
comment.
1AC card that.
The 1AC card says
Yeah,
that.
it says they didn't go through notice and comment.
No, it says did undergo notice and comment.
Yeah, it's.
The DHS rule did, but we get rid of the FAM.
Okay, well, it's a link to the politicized nature of the app.
Okay,
Alright, sure. How does the Attorney General kind of?
It has the Attorney General institute a binding memo that would sort of call for public charge restrictions to
How do you know the binding memo will be upheld?
We'll read solvency cards in.
2 minutes. Alright, 8:30. Could you pass me this?
Yeah.
Okay, ready for an order?
Yeah.
Disease, hospitals, solvency, TOC, and reduce an admission, like all on one page. The executive counterplan, like the maintain restrictions counterplan, the attorney general counterplan, the single payer counterplan, Chevron based infrastructure.
Are you sure this is the right to exceed?
It might not be.
ICC
Nope, it is not.
And also just to clarify, do you know what was after the AG counterclaim?
Sorry, the AG counterplan,
Yeah.
after that was single payer.
Okay.
Okay, I just need to rename the document. Okay, it should be sent now. Is anyone not ready?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just coming.
Can you repeat the order after the shutdown was said?
Base agenda.
Yes. Alright, I'm good.
Cool. Trump's new public charge will drive millions out of health insurance and thereby increase the risk of a catastrophic pandemic, a supercharged pathogen who quickly eradicate the species and even limit the outbreaks and send conflict escalation by exacerbating internal security challenges. The hospital's contention, a spike in uncompensated care and renewed labor shortages would obliterate RHO's infrastructure disparities, drive unsustainable urbanization, which is an existential threat. Three scenarios. First is megacity crime, supply shocks lead to conflict. Second is eco-terrorism. Activists could use designer bugs, nanobots, or AI drones. Third is innovation keeps solve a conflict of crises and independently defensive dispersion solves the impact to nuclear war. And I just realized I completely skipped the flow of the disease advantage because I go back there. The first argument about circumvention is solved by durable fiat. Trump has to comport with the plan regardless. That obscure standard is not perceived. The other country's argument, the barium evidence indicates that only the U.S. is interconnected enough. The no disease subsumed by two thesis claims. The first is antigenetic shift. Pathogens naturally mutate to overcome any natural limitations. The second is globalization. It overwhelms burnout and negates all of their empirics. The ACA argument doesn't assume the fact that all of our evidence is in the context of Medicaid being sufficient in status quo. The double turn argument doesn't assume the fact that we result in immigrants not having to use uncompensated care. The war turns disease argument is unsubstantiated by evidence they've conceded. Our evidence, which indicates disease is comparatively bigger internal link to conflict. Hospitals. Already read the top level there. They say, if they make an assertion about eco-terror, you should default to evidence. It's predictive about what will happen when there are unsustainable megacities. The next argument about funding, our argument is that you can't manage funding in a sustainable fashion in a world where there is rapid urbanization. All of our evidence speaks to that. They read AI defense. We haven't read an AI impact. The status quo argument is completely non-responsive. Our evidence is predictive about when the rule is implemented. A variety of different changes will occur. The insertion of all causes. First, they should have read the card. Second, all of our evidence is descriptive of hospitals being the key internal link to revitalizing these communities and our uniqueness claims subsumes all of this. The argument about the impact filter not being true. They don't have evidence. We have evidence that speaks to this question, and it's key. The solvency contention. The deportation argument, cross-apply my argument about spillover. The plan necessarily invalidates codependent statutory interpretations. The TOC argument. We mean A point is plantex in a vacuum, B point reducing the diminishing intensity, which narrow negative verb reduce transitive to bring down an intensity, C point their author, but F test of 19 article was written 2 years ago, so it's not current. Executive order test presidential proclamation because the NA not about condition and disability can be classified as qualitative, also give us a lot of new leeway for new arguments in the 1AR because they didn't read a violation. And counter interpretation restrictions or limitations or qualifications, no statutory definition, do not consider the word as being determined by the definition, restrictions, limitation, or qualification prefer it. A point's predictability only be able to define B point over limiting breadth, yet is key to topic education. The first executive counterplan, permutation do both. There's no net benefit. I'll get to that on the disads. Permutation do that counterplan. There's a massive confusion disad because the executive is forwarding two completely inconsistent interpretations of the public charge requirement, which means that all of our chilling effect offense still completely applies. There's also a strike down disad. There's no way the court would allow the executive to interpret the same provision to mean two different things. You can't uphold the FAM guidance while simultaneously repealing the DHS proposed rule. Our evidence indicates that they are codependent. And finally, there's a mistrust disad. The public charge, people that are susceptible to the public charge requirement won't believe the Trump administration. We need some sort of external constraint. The AG counterplan. Permutation to both cross-apply the net benefit analysis from both permutation to the counterplan. There's a massive confusion disad, specifically proven by the way that they articulated solvency and cross-ex. They have no evidence that indicates the exact how many people would comport, and that means that everyone will assume that the rule is going to be categorically implemented. That also lends itself to a circumvention disad because there's no way that Trump would order people not to comply with the AG ruling. Their scope of durable fiat only applies to the AG, plus he's lost all credibility after Mueller, the single-payer counterplan. Perm to both, perm to the counterplan. It obviously links to all of the net benefits. First, infrastructure. It's a massive bill that would go through Congress and send divisions amongst the GOP base. It's a betrayal. It's a massive betrayal to the healthcare promises that he made during the campaign. And it can't solve disease. A point doesn't remediate the chilling effect. Even if immigrants are eligible in the world of the counterplan, they're skeptical of all social services because of the way that the public charge was being interpreted in this visa point. The Trump administration would expand its interpretation of public charge to include the new single-payer program and thereby eliminate early detection for those immigrant populations. And it can't solve rural hospitals. Ace point, our evidence is descriptive of the fact that immigrants themselves are the ones that are going to move and drive unsustainable urbanization, which means that if we win the above argument, that it completely takes out the counterpoint. Basic point, they have no solvency mechanism for labor shortages. The immigrants make up 20% of the supplementary positions. That was processed. The Chevron dissent. It's game over. None of the 1 and C applies with normal means as a district court. Read our Maniac evidence. It's about Baltimore's lawsuit. Don't allow them to clean this up in the block. Justifies endless sandbagging. Chewy sees last opportunity for offense. Otherwise, they'll overwhelm us. We would have clarified in the 1 and C. And Chevron isn't going anywhere. Schenkman and Rumsey. 17 judges of Chevron may be a long shot, even with Gorsuch and majority may be reluctant to up into long-standing precedent, especially where Congress's legislative limit its reach rather than you return Gorsuch can recognize deference as nuance, acknowledging experts are entitled to great deference. We have the courts intercede into executive immigration policy making, which necessarily link terms the dissent. The base dissent. Trump's not tied to the court. 417, a federal judge. Mark Trump shall be in decision. Trump attacks illegitimate. The State Department and DHS said they would roll back their enforcement that ban in compliance with the court's temporary restraining order. Trump attacked the restraining order and checked the legitimacy of the judge who handed it down. Trump restriction his credentials or rock solid regard. 18, Trump scores 70 back-to-back wins in immigration. All citizens today for reform to rest section 287 sanctuary cities, deferral courts, parents, embassy, recalcitrant countries, refugees, enhanced vetting, DACA, TPS, high-profile policy shifts have been coupled with several adjustments and supporters. Resilient, Shapiro 17. If Trump embraces amnesty, how many will fall despite focus on Latin American commentators evidence suggests little or new will bet their large number of party loyalists immigration job issue, which voters means their opinion Trump doesn't have to worry. And guest workers self-preserving 12, 20 Republican presidents make immigration authority American powers with this almost always a cover story. Trump doesn't need to protect American workers. He's already raising caps for immigrants from Central and South America. Contradiction gets lost in the day-to-day noise. Market day-to-day noise. And no diversionary war. Ace of point of supporter version C17. Trump doesn't need to start war saying this, you know how emotional Americans are. He can choose what he wants to be hated for, preferably something. So he uses during the campaign of war that actions may cause indignation. Trump starts off another meaningless so-called for the media. I'll be asking for a major investigation into voter fraud. And the point is military or physical fever 17. The military should reject illegal orders and dictated seconds holding extra security devices would set up alarms and would take enormous persuasion that would involve many ubiquity of wars or multiple layers of give us high confidence questions would be asked in Iraq, which just seems spent over a year debating. Congress voted. The agenda is set. Court shield Cherminsky 17 that branch can enforce against political majorities. Judiciary is most insulated from political pressure. Judges have 5 tenure and no scaling may not be decreased. They never face re-election. Judicial selection reinforce anti-majoritarian character. The court reflects many political views. Jurisdiction is mandatory and bill will pass differences within the Senate between the two chambers over gas tax and won't come until summer. Mids 4 15. Progress remains elusive, hasn't Senator leaning towards a Democratic way of making noise, hasn't Senator leaning towards overturning past House leadership wants to be forward with the bill. Details are scarce, not to raise gas tax, open question about whether leadership will get behind Senate or as is pushing to get surplus reauthorization through by the summer has to be spent for a broader bill. Say gas tax out of the question, and fights are obviously inevitable post the Mueller report, and a variety of different empirics, including the Arab Spring, disprove their ag impact. And Democratic subpoena stump bid. 416 Trump are moving to resist congressional request for info, increase the likelihood of a projected legal fight. White House officials already digging in on it. So report the president's team are preparing for a sense of legal battle. Democrats are resolute about issuing subpoenas or resulting data to be sensitive, expensive, and unpredictable. This is going to take time, equal, resources, and precious time. And issues compartmentalized. Program 18. Lawmakers relativity like expanding during the confirmation fight over Kavanaugh. Congress is leading a hostility, or is it amid the turmoil approved the first revamp of aviation policy and nuclear defeat by partisan measure to combat opiate abuse approved by partisan water and infrastructure passed by Mayweather? How lawmakers so find themselves in a moral over major issue. You have fortune courts and another frequently that's just politics. Successful lawmakers compartmentalized. And I'll finish reading the Gristle thing card. Trump doesn't, here it is. Trump routing public attacks on welcome outsiders while backdooring more of their legal entry through executive actions over only racist and no one seemed to notice moving ahead with an overhaul the grass worker program that meant hundreds of thousands of farm workers will set aside crucial qualifications for HUB to pay from 66 to 81,000 fixing immigration is a priority for the Trump administration the way that fixing the World Series is a priority for organized crime. Correct?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, let me see.
We're doing the card.
Oh, wait, do you have?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's set.
Alright. You good?
Yeah.
I want to talk about the hospital's advantage. So this megacity scenario, the way I understand it is just that people moving to like these sort of megacities without proper resource management generates all of this like instability in there.
No. Yeah, the argument is that when people move to megacities, that generates bad resource management.
Okay.
And that when the megacities are run in an unsustainable fashion, that produces bad things.
Well, what causes people to move to those areas?
Infrastructure disparities as a result of rural hospital closures.
Okay. Why are rural hospital closures sort of the key to infrastructure disparities?
Our evidence indicates that the hospital is the most important element of rural infrastructure. It's the second largest employer in the vast majority of those regions, and it's a key pull factor.
Second, what's the first?
Huh?
What's the first?
I don't have that information readily available.
It seems like there are other things such as, for example, manufacturing, which probably is the first most important job or job.
Well, sure. If there are manufacturing jobs in an area, right, then people who can work in those manufacturing positions might stay in the world of rural hospital closures, or they might leave because they can no longer get access to healthcare. Okay. But the vast majority of our internal link is predicated on the people that are dependent on the healthcare service sector leaving. Because obviously, once the hospitals close in the world of, like in the status quo, there's not just going to be like an influx of new manufacturing jobs to offset the unemployment.
The Chevron dissent, you said normal means is a district court. What evidence indicates this?
The first piece of solvency evidence about the FAM talks about the Baltimore lawsuit.
Yeah, but I wish that was highlighted.
It was. It's what we disclosed to you before the round. We said we were changing the highlighting
what
that
evidence,
card.
what
and
evidence
then we
makes a
did.
prescriptive claim to the Baltimore lawsuit?
I mean, if you want to run solvency advocate theory,
it,
that card doesn't make a prescriptive claim of any sort.
What court is this taking place in? Because this evidence doesn't say that.
Sure, I can pull up it's the Maryland Federal Court.
The Maryland Federal Court.
The district court.
And you're going to argue that the Maryland Federal Court is going to overturn the FAM?
Yeah.
How?
They rule against the administration. That's why they filed the suit in the district court, because the district court can issue an injunction and say, no, you can't do that.
But how does the district court then spill over to, I don't know, like broader SCOTUS regulations, cases that happen in other areas, et cetera?
We don't read a precedent advantage.
So it's literally only Maryland?
Huh?
It's like,
if the Trump administration defies the edict from Maryland, then a higher court of appeals would be like, no, you can't do that.
okay.
That's durable fiat.
We're going to take the running process back.
Theoretical reasons for 15?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. 5.8. Just like that. Reset. Everyone ready for an order? It's going to be the executive account plan, the attorney general account, nope, not the executive. Executive account plan, single payer account plan, then the disease advantage, hospital advantage. Can we go over this again? Thanks.
Yeah.
Is anyone not ready? The executive account plan solves the case. All the after cards by why public charge is bad out of a proposed rule. That's the Roosevelt and Smith evidence. The account plan has the executive maintain current public charge restrictions and not increase anymore, so people will still be able to access health insurance, won't overburden hospital assaults, uncompensated care, and labor shortages, which avoids the links to the disadvantage. We'll insert the short to the debate. Only 3,000 people were barred to the public charge last year, which means the part of the after the account plan is not solved as minuscule with respect to large impacts of the advantages. Sufficiency for means to err negative on a massive versus the disadvantage. Permutation do both. It links to that benefit. The account plan functionally maintains the status quo, but the affirmative will reduce public charge restrictions, which links to that benefit. Maintaining public charge restrictions would satisfy his base. They wouldn't have to accept it was the thing for him for doing something that was never finalized and only proposed. Obviously, the purpose of the account plan is severance because the account plan does not reduce restrictions on immigration and confusion. This is not forwarding two consistent interpretations of public charge because Trump's proposed rule will be taken off the federal register for the second plank in the account plan. This also agencies have strike down. This at 8 point because they have no evidence for it. Piece point, it's not inconsistent because they concede on Chevron that agencies can interpret statute however they want. The chilling effect and the mistrust disadvantage because they're paying close attention to the federal register. The entire reason the chilling effect exists right now about a proposed public charge rule is because immigrants are paying attention to the federal register. They know what's on the books and what's off the books. Even if Trump removes the public charge rule, it will signal to immigrants a signal of trust that the public charge expansion will no longer exist, but it will also satisfy his base because Trump's base never expected him to go through the rule until after the rule is being implemented. The single payer counter plan, it solves the app. That's the state's institute single payer health exchange, which guarantees anyone in the United States access to healthcare and hospitals. It solves both advantages. It's not an immigration issue. It's a question of equal access to healthcare. The counter plan does that because that is states fund healthcare and allows anyone to go to a hospital without framing. The framing issue is that Hughes messed up this counter plan in the 2AC. He answered it like a federal government single payer counter plan. The counter plan uses the states institute single payer, which obviously means the federal government can't interfere. It doesn't link to any of the benefits. The permutation do both links because it occurs federal government action. The permutation to counter plan severs the federal government and the links to net benefit arguments were answered above. The chilling effect argument, there's no need to solve. The counter plan gives everyone in the geographic borders of the United States essentially free access to healthcare. They can just go to a hospital even without federal healthcare and get treatment. Because single payer means that anyone in the United States is eligible for treatment. It solves the early detection chilling because nobody will hesitate to go to the doctor. No room for circumvention. The federal government has no room to interfere in the counter plan because it's a state program and a state issue. They can expand public charge, but there's no impact to that because everyone's still receiving fully subsidized healthcare. States can do it. We'll later in LC 13, a state's public environment, as the government avoided back to the Washington-based lobbying and rule, making dates even further compromise and HHS rule making process with prevent corporate pressures. Many points of the such an example of state reform that shows this is straightforward. The national legislation, it solves the second advantage. Immigrants won't move, and people won't stop working for rural hospitals and states are fully funding healthcare, which prevents labor shortages and immigrants moving away from rural areas, which prevents the overcrowding in urban areas. This is the advantage. Give me 1 second. Vote negative on presumption. The plan solves 0% of the advantage. The law of the ultra is not the one that denies immigrants. It's the deportation ground, not the inadmissibility ground. We are factually right. This is an entirely separate law. Inadmissibility is section 212, not 237. They'll be labeled a public charge within 5 years of entry. USC has no date. 237 11 serves prove that you become a public charge within 5 years of your entry. This takes out the entirety of their Medicaid term. Like if they're right, the very existence of the law creates the conditions for the chilling effect. The act leaves it unchanged. Your evidence agrees. 1AC Rose above 18 public charge benefits received by the legal immigrants who are not yet citizens or use as evidence of public charge status. They can't get out of this because they conceded the admission violation violation of topicality, and that omission is concerned by Section 212 of the INA. The act can only topically affect omission. The 2AC do not answer that, which means the only part of the INA that the act can affect is Section 212, not 237, which is the part that immigrants care about. 1 and C number 2, Section 221G ensures circumvention. Even if Trump can't deny people based on public charge, he can through administrative processing, which enables the USCIS to deny anyone without saying why. Durable fiat doesn't solve because it only covers if fiat mandated in the plan, which does not cover Section 221G. Codependent statutes are relevant because you conceded on topicality you only affect admission. With 3, to 1C number 3, no impact. New diseases are incredibly unlikely. It requires a huge evolutionary jump between different kinds of pathogens, i.e. fungi, bacteria, and viruses to create diseases. It's impossible to be able to identify them to treat. This is agile evidence. Rapid spread is becoming less likely. Really, 12 really throughout the past 5 decades, even that new pandemic has been foretold. The rabies epidemic never materialized with pure backup predictions, quickly and terrifying. The whole number of deaths has been 176 new global pandemics during the less migration cities. These opportunity viruses for all left community species has become like high blood or sick word and infection. Their client living states improve. Cause of infections just a cold and dry, but all that be mile off African skin. Soldier on social engagement, even lethal virus go to global. The ability of medical science to sequence a genome and devices, vaccine or cure is getting better all the time. Globalization doesn't overwhelm burnout. This means it'll never spread in the first place because burnout means that diseases stay localized. 4th, the act requires the ideal implementation of the INA the ACA to solve the recutting their 1AC producers says that everyone in the U.S. needs access to healthcare, which is not happening. Coverage gaps are inevitable, which means they can't solve the advantages. It's predicated on universal enrollment in health insurance. There's a bunch of people who are not eligible for the Medicaid or ACA now, not signing up. Among citizens, that rate is 27 million. KFAQ number of uninsured just below 27 million, 2016 now, 2017 number of uninsured people increased by 700,000 people. Total LPRs is just 13.2 million. Age no date, 13.2 million LPRs. Trump is gutting the ACA. Kamal and all 1026 Trump received a tremendous rental. These $0 effective in 2019 as part of tax reform. Trump announced rules that will allow more loose to regulate plan. 2018 premiums will be average 6% higher. As a result of the individual mandate with fuel exchange, benchmark sold premiums will be out 60% higher. States can opt out of Medicaid eligibility expansion. As a result, the poorest people, including immigrants, will still not receive health insurance, but kill in 2016. The ACA, the potential to to extend improve healthcare access. However, the core rule that states can opt out of Medicaid expansion. 22 states have opted out. People should be eligible, not eligible. The formula in Americans fall into a coverage gap, making too low to qualify for tax credits, but too much to qualify for Medicaid. The mainlands in the coverage gap are low point jobs that do not have access to employer health insurance. Unlikely people in the coverage gap would afford health insurance. The average cost amounts to 1/4. Unlikely people who find themselves in the coverage gap will do the health insurance. Their evidence agrees. 1AC Byron, all 19 at December Texas judge showed the entirety of the Affordable Care Act, the heightened uncertainty and the health sector and the economy. 5. The U.S. is not key. Most of their outbreak stuff is like MERS, swine flu, the Ebola, or diseases that is fun elsewhere in the globe, which means the risk of disadvantage is 17 million immigrants divided by 7 million people because they do nothing to stop diseases that can spawn in other countries. Now, the hospital's advantage. First, the plan does not solve resource shortages to rural hospitals. Actually, double terms, they use Medicaid since the ACA no longer covers them, but that increases the strain on Medicaid. It makes rural hospitals less effective because they need to be forced to treat more immigrants with the same amount of funding. Rural hospitals will never be profitable. Kill 18 rural hospitals are closing in 11 countries, seeing on the brink of serious delivery challenges with putting up product for breakthroughs, profitability as obvious. Should the rural areas have gotten sicker, penalizing readmission, and punish quality deforestation impacts. Rural hospitals cannot afford to invest in resources today. I think the system financial statistician is close to compare this one single pair where investment is upheld from a budget profitability driven by community and product regional planning. Second, immigrants don't go to hospitals for chronic diseases. They're too scared to lose their status. They sort of think they'll risk deportation to receive Tylenol if the right to the chilling effect is so strong, but they will go for the worst diseases, the ones likely to cause extinction, which is when you see cross-sections, they are literally dying of a life-threatening condition. 3, no eco-terrorism. Ace is why people in Kansas don't look to destroy America because Los Angeles exists. There's a massive disparity already, and urbanization is high now. Their news just says in the 2 weeks you should have further evidence. Their evidence is a search step that doesn't say that megacities are correlated with eco-terrorism. Beats when we already have successful megacities. Just because we increase unemployment in some areas doesn't mean that foreign areas can't model the successful parts of U.S. megacities like architecture. Obviously, they can't model population management in the United States because that's different in every part of the world, but they can model the successful part of megacities development, which is successful to sufficient to solve their internal like Point states can literally just build housing or maybe able to compensate for more people moving to their areas. 4th, all causes of rural flight they cannot solve. Their Kalu evidence indicates urban areas are simply more attractive, have better infrastructure, more access to urbanization, and access to government. Hospitals are not the single determining factor, and it means that rural flight is inevitable right now. 5, the impact of overpopulation in response to an emergency in megacities. We can just redistribute food to solve the internal impact described in the 1AC Curve evidence. 1AC Curve 16, we have a few are equipped to survive through emergency food, water, and energy crisis and continue to make sure each one with to the earth, both sense and inhabited regions. Average time on your card. You know what, it's fine. Attorney General counterplan, conceded permutation, just a test of competition. There's no theory on this. Anything cross-applicable is new and it can be justified and it can be entered into an R. Anything else?
No, we have 18 seconds.
Yeah. Alright, we're good.
Hey, stop, correct.
Okay.
But it's actually,
What was that?
it took 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Because I
Okay.
had taken 1:30 for the
Yeah,
case,
that's
and I
good.
forgot. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Let's start on the executive counterclaim.
Cool.
The argument about only 3,000 people being denied, we read evidence from 2018, a year after your citation, that indicates there's been a 300% uptick in denials and that that's been perceived by immigrants.
So 9,000,
13,000.
13,000. This is without the expansion of Trump's public charge rule. It's still an insignificant internal.
It is with the FAM expansion, and our evidence indicates that it's been perceived. And
Okay.
it's causing people to disenroll.
Yes, but that disenrollment is temporary and will stop if Trump's proposed public charge rule just goes nowhere. Like the impact of the FAM, the entire point
Okay,
of the
well,
act
let's
is the
talk about
impact
that.
of the FAM expansion.
We've read like 4 cards in the 1AC that are like,
They're all
immigrants-
about Trump's proposed public charge
excuse me.
rule.
Immigrants are misinterpreting the rule. They don't understand the rule. They're confused, and they mistrust the Trump
Well,
administration.
they understand that the Trump administration is looking to expand public charge. The counterplan essentially maintains status quo immigration restrictions.
It maintains their more expansive interpretation that they just
A
implemented.
barely more expansive interpretation that is denied
It's
like
significantly
13,000
more
people.
expansive.
13,000 people out of millions of LPRs.
Well,
every
also, you're not accounting for the fact, like, you're not accounting for deterrence. You're not accounting for a whole lot of things while you're saying that.
All of that deterrence might exist now. That chilling effect is temporary and is reliant
the
upon
entire
the
thesis
proposed
of our
public charge
act-
rule
the
that
entire
the counterplan eradicates.
The entire thesis of our act is that people don't get denied because instead of becoming ineligible,
Like,
they disenroll.
okay, I admit that the act probably solves better than the counterplan, but the difference between the act and the counterplan is not significant enough to outweigh the disact. That's the whole point of
Well, to
submission.
outweigh the difference between the link to the dissat, presumably base, the executive counterplan, differential between base versus the court's act.
Okay, but you calling it the executive counterplan doesn't change sort of the mandates of the counterplan. It's not the executive unilaterally.
By your own admission, the FAM rule is tiny.
Right.
You eliminate the big rule that Trump has promised to deliver to his base.
Well, the Trump's base is not wedded to him because, like, Trump has promised, like, Trump's base is not gonna hate him because he doesn't expand the
Wait,
public
so
charge
you will
restriction.
defend that the link to the base dissat, you will only go for a link to the base dissat predicated on FAM.
The link is based off of, like, action happening. Trump not taking an action is not a link.
So you are only going for a link to reversing FAM.
Inaction on the Trump administration's part is not a link to the base dissat.
See, like,
I just need to answer in the affirmative to the question. You're
The-
going
the
for a link
perception
predicated
of
on the FAM
eradicating-
change.
The perception of eradicating the entire public charge restriction is the link to the base dissat that we're going for.
Okay. Wait. How does the plan eradicate the entire public charge restriction?
Because the 1AC plan text is.
We reduce the restriction by
Oh, are you
eliminating the FAM
really gonna
limits.
go for, like, we don't eradicate the public charge restriction now, we just substantially reduce it? Like,
That's how we've always characterized it, reversing the FAM changes.
reversing the FAM changes means.
By your own admission, again, it's tiny.
But by reversing the FAM changes means that the vast majority of public charge is now gone.
Alright, so you got. Chevron.
Infrastructure base.
It should be sent. Is everyone good? Okay.
I don't have it.
Oh.
You need to fix that.
Yeah.
Just got here.
Yeah, I just have.
Okay.
You said Chevron agenda base?
Agenda, Chevron agenda base. Are we good? Yep. Chevron disad will concede that there's no lengthy infrastructure disad issues compartmentalized, which means that if there's a straight turn, it doesn't apply the base disad. The disad outweighs loss of base will induce Trump to irrationally escalate flashpoints like Iran, Venezuela, the Chinese, or North Korea to attract domestic dissent that goes nuclear because of Trump's unilateral authority and draws in great powers to integral alliances causing the extinction. Base erosion induces Trump to resort to xenophobia, instills uncertainty in immigrants, which turns the case as harder. 18. Trump needs to distract the domestic sources by blaming the foreign Trump. South America for the base runs, we should have more xenophobic rhetoric and policies. I know there's going to be a low risk of the case and the disad, but it should outweigh because it induces Trump's foreign policy. It changes how he responds to diseases because he only care about his base and not really about the rest of the stuff going on, like hospital closures or disease spreads happening in the United States. The first argument, courts don't necessarily shield. First, it says that other evidence says that Trump attacked the courts as legitimate during the travel ban, but whenever Trump, but he won't be able to do this when Trump never implements the public charge thing after a ton of attacks, which make them super disappointed. I.e., when it goes through the district courts and it gets durable, and durable fiat ends up getting applied, so it goes to the Supreme Court. Trump would end up lashing out against this, but durable fiat means that every time it goes to the Supreme Court, it never actually ends up getting applied. This ends up getting tied to Trump, especially under Gorsuch, which will read the cards for courts don't shield Trump gets attached to Gorsuch, Davis, and Trump not even Gorsuch is elevated conservative mold, just from partisan ensure that Democrats inflame Trump's news while applied by Trump's nominee, Democrats will the terms of the Supreme Court to a referendum on the president. Trump tied himself to Gorsuch, Carter, so the natural deportation of the Gorsuch having part position because Gorsuch see that the biggest successful campaign promise a new Charles replacement court action links decisions are politicized. Hamilton told the when the president news rhetoric from the president Thomas Johnson report that Johnson will percent the shape of politicians argue that politicians process are contemplated interviews by politicization costs politicians faith in the core. The next argument about Trump being restrictionist, there are evidence hyper-specific to public charge that we'll read later. There are arguments about restrictionist creds don't really matter in the face of an overwhelming failure who's never experienced it. The link to make proper the after versus Trump's anti-immigrant stance by forcing him to endorse some progressive immigration reform, signing his name to a bill, or not being able to pass this public charge agenda will be perceived as a betrayal of his core America First promise and undermine his message, specifically a stringent public charge restriction on the foundation of Trump's Highland immigration mission message here, evidence specific to public charge here, and Nixon 18 that one of the immigrants for accepting methods of deals with the galvanization of public voters rights, supporting the immigration costs and jobs before higher taxes are the borders and overall commercial embrace all the rest of the immigration that should be one of the Americans in the Congress wanted enthusiastic chances basically use public charge to limit test for Trump's anti-immigration promises Salam 17 justice for public charge is up to the executive that Clinton in a sense the national assistance of Democratic depending on Trump leader revised I said that taking all the Trump to the popular one family voters will be classified as a restriction by defining a public charge broadly used in the major victory to this makes eliminating public charge gets perceived as prioritizing immigrants over Trump supporters. COVID-18 immigration was intended to protect the taxpayer and Trump already using cruel strategy for the best cruel strategy is handing up the right space no way based law working to find Democrats as the opposite of planning to use the same public charge. Back up to the Trump not tied to the courts argument. This was about the travel ban. Trump ended up getting the travel ban passed, which is why this never ended up mattering. His base ended up not caring. The next argument about the support being resilient immigration matters more than anything else. That's Kilgore evidence. We've also read public charge specific evidence, so you should filter through that. Every poll substantiates a direct correlation between the approval on immigration and overall approval. That's the only thing that's matched on any other issue. Immigration is the one line he can't cross. He's studying that. He's seen close another argument all hell about that anti-immigration levels he part of the base Trump is a fundamental line to base level defines immigration line that not immigration a national that defies Trump is the conservative thought he quickly have something tangible to his base. No finds support is unconditionally. There are lines he can't cross. Immigration is the unique intersection of cultural and economic fears. Brownstein 19 legal immigration comes determined to restrict not some hustle is only one bringing a much larger structure than not specific gang regions company everyone's copying their Trump a little bit beyond the reason Trump's doing the QB is not eradicate opposition being strength be held the white voters raising powerful last day I think alienates a bunch of public identity which is cultural identity. I think ethnic nationalism the numbers argument the guest workers thing was not a significant increase as their evidence says. It was quote day-to-day noise but public charge massively goes through the biggest crowd for admissibility, and Trump would not be able to overturn it. And despite all of his fights, his base would see him as not really pandering to their interests, which would cause all of them to leave him in mass exodus. And
Diversionary war will happen. The Oppenheimer evidence is quite specific to what happens when Trump loses base and is specific to immigration. He needs his base in order to be perceived as popular and as a successful president. He'll lash out because he wants to retrain that by diverting attention anywhere else. The first argument of Twitter, it doesn't happen. Showing Trump the Trump is not the initiator version on a binary version. Walking tweet of foreign policy versus no more BP. How we be Trump inherent before in North Korea. The advisors argument no check strikes extinction home guard another matter of using the Trump the United States the kid place media impossible override the refuse the defense secretary the order of the matter to proceed the law shows ahead. A president does not check the authority of a single verbal direction. Advisors don't have the authority to stop and over 17 stop the county minister stop the war more probably order to go rather than the president every man the defense secretary is not look if he does not to consult with the advisory.
Good move. Wait, 50 seconds. Or actually, start from your second. Wait, 40 seconds. Counting it out. So.
Alright, the order. It's gonna be the disease advantage.
Just come back in during the speech because she's taking it.
We can
Like,
pause
for a
it.
second, what she says.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine. Thank you so much. Can you do that again?
Alright, the order is gonna be the disease advantage, the hospital's advantage, the executive counterplan, the single payer counterplan, the chaperone DA, the base DA. Alright, is anyone not ready?
Disease and catastrophic pandemic could terminate the species, super spreaders, and instability. They say deportation, they see deportation as next. Solvency, consider a spillover analysis. They're codependent, and we preempt this. The hospital's advantage, we're going to we'll concede all their defense here. It's never profitable, impact defense, whatever. The executive obviously links to the net benefits of families, minuscule, won't elicit outrage, but they kill the big new rule, which triggers resentment as per their own characterization of the no net benefit analysis, and they're justified by recontextualization of the DA and extend the confusion. They forward two irresponsible interpretations of the same text, one for the DOS and one for DHS. People will obviously misinterpret this idea that they're paying a ton of attention to federal way of registering is wrong. Evidence says the general changes perceived only the plan is clean enough to rebuke this and extend the strike down. We don't need evidence here. Obviously, it's impermissible. The executive needs to pick one of these, a single pair. Extend permutation to both diseases and linear systemic risk. They can't solve early detection and chilling effect. Cements a suspicion of all the services. They'll decline care. Filter through this through the lens of mistrust. Also, Trump would expand the rule to include state programs. They had zero answer to this. They can't use durable fiat. There's no law protecting the states. Chevron. They conceded a straight turn here. Chevron sticks around now with the pen intercedes on existing deference regimes and preempts agency and interpretation. It saves net neutrality. A terminal impact is tech leadership. Key to divert extinction and escalation vis-a-vis deterrence at base. Court shields, their analysis was incoherent here. First, Trump never has to endorse the plan. He'll fight the court like he always does. Even appointees will actually rob people up to change the law. All their evidence is in context of a betrayal. And second, no evidence says someone gets certified. That is extremely hard. Like 1.1% did it, and it takes a year. The Bernard evidence. Trump's restrictionist credentials are beyond our approach. Bernard details 12 major policy wins here, and that list doesn't even include the travel ban, national emergency, or silent proclamation. The backing down is on one. He only backed down on one aspect of a little-known proposed regulation, which wouldn't impact general attitudes, and their evidence is power-tied no reverse causal warrant. Shapiro. Now, even if the plan were perceived to be a doctrinal shift, voters follow their leadership here. It's fantastic here. Party loyalty is more important than any ideological predisposition, and court supporters are willing to change their views to come forward with the presidents, and the effect is particularly pronounced in the context of immigration. And here's more evidence here. Nobody cares about the policy. Values 18. There's no possible politician who can endorse or enact that will have meaningful impact on the likelihood of retaking political political power. Most American voters are not watching. You just don't care enough. People tend to be indifferent to policies and are not eager to hold everyone accountable. Liberal, conservative, etc. have little influence over opinion of immigration. Little interest beyond browsing the headlines. Parties come to take large ideological steps without jeopardizing their chance of taking over and main lever of influence is lobbying party elites. Basically, the best studies to prove Jacob's 19. So, study political communication argue voter on his messaging. President lie. None of the systematically supporters are through fantasy. Trump makes a claim as supporters think it's through the languages. Happy to where his messages communicated by inciting supporters. He helps affirm his reality. Blame shifting strength his popular position. Another take Trump uses his asserting positions that are popular. He's appealing to the crowd.
I keep going.
Okay. The drizzle-ping evidence. Guest workers Trump used executive action to admit tens of thousands of poor Hispanic immigrants, yet it got lost in the day-to-day noise. Several numbers here. First, previous travel ban ruling. Second, silent rulings, massive liberal challenge to Trump. That's the LibJack evidence. The third, executive litigation means court ruling against Trump inevitable. The fourth is Pereira liberal ruling against Trump. That's the Adler evidence. And the path to citizenship for high school immigrants. I'll insert this tweet here. Trump 19. And recent spending bill anchored immigration policy. 215. Trying to Trump is pursuing immigration policy. B is the spending bill contains a provision that make construction offensive and reporting aliens impossible. Takes into consideration the White House did not anticipate how strongly urban supporters opposed the bill. Just like the guest workers thumb Trump used executive action to admit 10,000 the Brzezinski. Okay, no divergent conflict Twitter checks this except the Brzezinski evidence the president seemed to know how to distract the public. You stir up an unrelated immigration controversy, and it's really easy to manipulate the modern news cycle and makes way more sense than starting a war. The base anti-interventionist. In 2018, Trump announced that roughly 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria are leaving. The decision constituted returning to the non-interventionist position that won in the support from his base. Campaign trail Trump was a relatively anti-war candidate called Iraq a big fat mistake. Likes to be seen as a man who keeps his promises. Anti-war right is an important part of his base.
Okay. Do you have anything to say?
1 second. I actually just want you to read this card. You cite this evidence that we didn't read. Here it is.
Okay. The Pereira thumbs Adler 18 justice is interpreted under severe dictated by plaintext the court needs not to resort to Chevron. Alito wrote Chevron requires us to accept government and construction. He argued that the court is ignoring Chevron.
TBS. Sanctuary Cities.
Sanctuary Cities, thumb Soviet 19. Trump sovereign court defeated Sanctuary Cities. Court struck down policy imposing conditions on states. That's it.
Yeah, I'll send it out before we start prepping.
Clarify, you checked both of the advantages at the top.
Huh? No, we said disease. We just did hospital.
Just hospitals.
And how much?
We have,
I'm going to put these in the doc because it's a lot of cards. Let me do it. Cool.
okay, just one. Cool. Alright, condition. I'll start. 5.
Sorry, there was a Sanctuary Cities card that didn't copy paste, so I sent it. Sorry, I was up at the wrong time.
Okay. Basis set. Executive counterplan. Single payer counterplan. Chevron set. Disease advantage. Where's this in?
Alright. Is anyone not ready? Cool. The face did that outweighs the Oppenheimer evidence. It's fantastic. Trump irrationally escalates last ones like Iran, Venezuela, where they're trying to seize as shock from domestic dissent among immigration issues. Trump's already used his nuclear option with a national emergency, so his only remaining option is nuclear escalation. There's probably be ludicrous on both sides in the event they ran a high risk of their impacts. The loss of base more turns it. He shifts all the focus to appeasing the base, which means less hospital funding for immigrants. Mega cities becoming highly unsustainable. Less money dedicated to agencies like health and human services, which just turns the case because the impact of the app is predicated off healthcare expansion and people receiving healthcare, not about immigration itself. This happens even with small dips in base sports. We do not need to win a large risk of the impact. The advantage starts at 17,000 divided by 7 billion. Is given that diseases can get very where diversion rewards and purely happen by Vietnam, the Gulf War, and Iraq, which will be hidden by Trump's irrationality of nukes. And sure, the probability of a scenario for escalation is much higher than that. Courts are politicized, regardless of the 3 hour spin. 2 ways the evidence is horrible. It's about the trial ban, which Trump's fun is a huge victory once the SCOTUS picks voted for him. In fact, the trial ban proves the link because the base went up in arms after it was blocked. Imagine if SCOTUS had decided against Trump, but the app is different. First, Trump politicized the court, appointing Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, irrevocably tied his agenda to future judicial decisions. That's Davis and Carter. Second, the app will be highly politicized. The Senate cross-sects that'll get appealed to a higher court because of Trump, and interest will fight it and send the Solicitor General to the court. Durable fiat means he will lose each decision up until the SCOTUS case, which means Trump will look powerless and impotent in the interim, and the SCOTUS will have to rule against Trump, which makes it look super bad. Third, the base is not smart. They would distinguish between a court ruling and an executive agenda item. All they see is Trump failing to deliver. The next argument is that his restrictions credentials are beyond approach. This is the uniqueness for our dissent. Trump's base expects him to crack down on foreign undocumented immigrants, so doing the opposite in a long string of restrictions actions gets perceived as betrayal because it undermines the ties between his base and immigration policies. It's especially true for public charges because it uniquely resonates with his base. First is economics. Trump's supporters view public charges as a drain on welfare and not prioritizing law-abiding Americans, letting them consume welfare be received as stealing taxpayer dollars and sheer Nixon. Second is false promises. Trump's using public charges to rally his base as Islam evidence, working class whites public charges to be coerced with the message because it fits with Trump's narrative of purifying America. Third is culture. Trump promised to put America first to protect the taxpayer code, but since the app interferes, that could be Trump's immigration agenda literally falling apart, the court undercutting his strategy of race baiting. The base is not resilient. Several pieces of evidence indicating immigration is the unique grid line because it's the unique intersection between culture and economic fears among his white base. The ideology Trumpism is not immutable. It's based on a series of campaign promises that Trump promising to protect jobs and put America first. If Trump breaks that, the support which follows him will shatter multiple words. First is data. When does he kill Gorsuch's direct correlation between approval and immigration to overall approval, which proves inextricable. Second is a red line. Healy says it's the one line he can't cross because the base is primarily constituted of anti-immigrant zealots. Their evidence is bad. It's literally Ben Shapiro. It's also pure hyperbole because his bias wants to maintain the perception of a strong case base because he's in love with Trump. The first 1 AR card doesn't see the word Trump or immigration, so it doesn't assume the unique relationship. The second card assumes a quote fantasy among his base. That fantasy only extends to the point where they love immigration. The asylum ban thumper court ordered to say Senate down and technically sustain the asylum ban on the books. The travel ban, the court ruled for him. So I was into about Puro was irrelevant a year ago, and it was ruled for vagueness. The high skilled thumper, yes, because the base loves high skilled. That's the whole point of this. That guest workers doesn't matter because that quote sneaks in provisions. It wasn't about an entire case against Trump. He won't use Twitter. He's using that now in the world of high approval ratings. The cloud enforcement to take it a step further and escalate foreign policy crisis. Sean Fields, a PhD, the Harvard government, permanent government that agrees with the one season evidence interpretation based nationalism is relevant because rallying around the flag is apparently true and supports spikes. Sanctuary seats don't matter. It's because of federal immigration policy, the executive counterplan, not going for continued permutation, just a combination of single payer. The counterplan solves the entire app. You should punish staff for messing up into it. It has a safe institute. A single payer system solves the disease. It's pretty obvious. Internal link is that it trick people delay seeking healthcare. They won't give them access to hospitals, which solves the early detection. Sufficiency. I understand the low risk of this, but I don't understand the deficits of counterplan permutation deal with the links, which outweighs a minimal increase in disease. It solves early detection. The one C evidence is we would give everyone in the United States functional access to healthcare without them having to apply. They don't have to apply. They would automatically receive it. Hospitals don't interrogate the immigration status, so anyone could just go to a hospital and receive fully covered treatment, which solves early detection because people will be incentivized to go to the hospital. Trump can't interfere. No evidence. One is the evidence says it's legal and states have the ability to do it. Even if he did encompass, but there's no impact because people wouldn't fear going to the doctor and healthcare would be fully funded for them. Chevron, there's zero evidence on the link turn. All they said is, quote, we intercede, which links to this app. That's not an explanation for a link turn. It's not reached the level of an argument. Voting on half-line non-explanations, that's bad precedent for debate, where 2 ways will just make half-line trade turns on every dissent, which makes it impossible to be net. We can see there's no link because they set their own meetings in the district court. The unique sentence is about the Supreme Court not overturning Chevron. There's a clear mismatch here anyway. If you think these are new, allow them. It's necessary to check back into a radically new explanation of the straight turn in the 1 AR. The 2 AR going for is relevant because the overwhelming majority of the cases will be ruling against Chevron now. Chevron's are pretty overruled regardless, so they don't have uniqueness for the straight turn. The disease advantage. Several pieces of defense implicate their ability to solve. First, they don't solve the deportation statute, which by extension means they don't solve the chilling effect. No evidence substantiates this spillover claim that news keeps making. Section 237 concerns deportation. They conceded until they can only expect Section 212 is game over because only the counterplan solves the chilling effect because nobody fears workers being deported because they can freely go to hospitals and receive treatment. But the gap does have a period of deportation because the applied period where the federal government and ICE are still eligible to deport them after they receive health care. Second, ACA coverage gaps take that gap. There are already 27 million people uninsured because ACA was struck down by a district court, which is far more than the people who don't have health care after Trump's expansion of public charge, which means that some diseases are inevitable. Third, the U.S. is not key. This was largely explained by the claim on the inside page, but the U.S. is not key to every. We have the most health infrastructure in the world. Most of the pandemics occur in other countries, which they can't possibly solve. Means the risk of the advantage nearly zero. Fourth, no impact of disease because of burnout, globalization, and the one area did not have a clear answer to our impact of this.
40 seconds.
You want me to compile a doc?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Second argument after deportation.
ACA coverage gaps.
Got it. Order's going to be disease, single pair, chevron base. Anyone not ready? A linear risk of a disease solvency deficit to the counterpoint is going to outweigh an almost completely mitigated base disad. They've conceded that disease turns conflict. It creates the conditions for instability that cause states to use nuclear weapons and thereby eradicate humanity independently. Super spreaders overcome every limitation they've identified. I'll get to that in a second. The argument about deportation, there's two key warrants that substantiate the spillover claims. The first is precedent, i.e. there's no limiting principle that would constrain the plans ruling just to the context of grounds of inadmissibility. If the court rules in that instance and they're right about the link to the base disad that it gets upheld, then obviously it applies to all other instances where you're engaging exactly the same kind of statutory interpretation, i.e. the deportation clause. And also, they've just consistently conceded that they're codependent, i.e. the deportation stuff wasn't directly changed by the rule, but the reinterpretation of the rule is what is leading to the reinterpretation of deportation, because the deportation section just cites the ground of inadmissibility section, which means that we necessarily overcome all of it. The ACA coverage gaps argument, they keep missing the boat. Our argument is obviously not that we insure everyone in the country. Rather, it's that when there are less and less people insured, that increases the propensity for a super spreader. That increases the propensity for a super spreader because there's a risk that certain clusters of populations will never report to the doctor. They say U.S. not key. I'm just going to refer you to the Barrium evidence. It's fantastic. It indicates that only the United States is interconnected enough to have an existential pathogen or when it's sufficient magnitude to overcome all the issues they've identified. Finally, they engage in a really lackluster extension of their defense. But our Snyder-Betty card is fantastic. It indicates one, that mutations, and two, unprecedented levels of globalization and recombination overcome all empirical checks as well as necessarily subsume any natural barrier that you can extract from their evidence. The single pair counterpoint. It doesn't solve the entirety of the app. The differential, i.e. the linearity stuff I was doing on the case page, is what is going to make you affirmative in a world where we get to advocate for a permutation. Obviously, neither strategy completely solves the impact of disease, but that differential is going to outweigh the basis that they assert that they solve for early access because it's unconditional, but they've conceded the three pieces of evidence in our extension of them on confusion, which is it doesn't matter what de jure is correct in terms incorrect in terms of whether or not immigrants are entitled to it. They're skeptical of any provision of public benefits and will try to avoid the doctor such that it's not counted against them. Legal misinterpretation is the entire thesis of the act. And also the argument about, they've also conceded the argument that Trump will just expand the public charge rule again to include those state single-payer programs. Their argument is that the counterpoint is legal. That's true, but there's nothing to prevent Trump from expanding his rule in order to get more credit with the base if their link story is correct. The Chevron stuff. Not going for it, concede, choose present argument. The base. the court shield, if Trump will backlash irrespective of who delivers the decision, it actually functions as a link term because it will motivate people to help him codify the law. It's obviously not a betrayal because he's advocating for a consistent position, and it seems like external factors are interfering, which allows him to scapegoat them. Plus, all of their analysis is predicated on it getting to the Supreme Court in order for Trump to be tied to anything, but they've conceded two key basis claims. The first is that cert is extremely unlikely. Only like 0.1% of cases ever get it. They haven't read evidence that the plan would be one of those cases, which makes you start the dissent presumptively low. And the second is that it will take years, and Trump will be out of office before the next one gets up there. We have several thumpers that prove our court shield analysis. One goes completely conceded, which is sanctuary cities. It was a massive defeat for the Trump administration, handed down by the courts, and yet he didn't divert and it didn't trigger any change. They also didn't contest the pariah decision other than to observe that it was on void for vagueness grounds, which is our argument. Plus, we have examples of even Trump betraying the base and doing sorts of things to increase immigration and the low-skilled immigration that they've traumatized that are bad. The H2Bs are evidence indicates that his racist rhetoric masks a massive expansion, which necessarily subsumes all of their analysis. They need to win a risk of the link in order to win any of their turns case analysis. But meanwhile, we have a turns by disease argument that inherently applies. You should also filter all of our link mitigation through the fact that the plan's a drop in the bucket. Trump has secured dozens of wins in the context of immigration. There's no reason the plan is key. They've read evidence that's like the public charge rule is popular in the base, but none that it's the key issue, or that if it didn't exist, that all of the other things wouldn't fill in. There are so many, too many to list accomplishments listed in the background evidence, which necessarily subsumes any disappointment that occurs as a result of the plan. Also, the Jones evidence substantiates the fact that they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and defer to those interpretations. Finally, a massive technical concession at the bottom. They've conceded that Trump would not divert. He can use Twitter, stoke another kind of distraction. The base is anti-intervention, which means diversionary war is an incoherent response because it would only elicit more backlash, which necessarily takes out 100% risk. The fact that I didn't flow an answer to this is a sufficient reason to vote affirmative, irrespective of the relative risk of the other arguments. Debate. Sorry, you wanted to judge off?
No, yeah.
Do you think yes, no?
Oh, I don't care.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, you're fine. It's gonna take a second.
Yeah, obviously.
Have you all sent whatever?
I'm sorry, I just exited out of the,
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Okay, it is now set.
Is there anybody who could get the, yeah, no, you're good. Thank you so much.
That was doing my finals.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I sort of got that vibe sometimes. We're seeing, yeah, 333. They just had their last round. So it was all. China were good. And then we had our app, it's last season, yes, which is fun. It's top
That's what's see.
And I guess they got a link or something.
It's like, it's bad.
What do you think?
Like, had they written it good, they said,
Maybe something. I'm not saying I'm sure.
let's stream around, right?
It's been alright, like I said, I've been simultaneously streaming around and like doing 3 essays at the same time, because I told myself to do all my essays in the TOC, and I did about half of them, and then I should have, and I was like, shit. So they were, all my essays are due at 5 o'clock, so in 20 minutes, I just finished my last one, and did all this around.
At least you got them all done.
Yeah, thank God, like,
It's rough.
I also want you to know that Tim Green has been sporadically texting me throughout the entire year today, promising very, 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 very.
Yeah. He's good, that's me too. She's chatting and stuff.
Oh, is he watching this?
Yeah. He wanted me, he doesn't use Facebook anymore, so he wanted me to like send him all links to the stream.
Yeah. I told everyone I'd get a camera for this round, but none of the cases want to be streamed, so it's just really bad.
There's no problem. What the stream?
So North Department does, but it, like, they also said like sometimes no, like every time they break it,
So then North Star doesn't.
North Star said no, every time they said no. Also, there's just like an back. I think there's a back. There's a surprisingly number of KKs here.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Like my TOC run last year, 4 of the 7 rounds were day ones, maybe 5.
The team that drove me here, they're having like their first year of this. Or actually, I guess they went for the game.
What team?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're 2-4.
Solid. We finished last year at 2 and 5.
Still made it.
We made it. Also, like, our like run last year is like running a bunch of so
Are you seeing the exit?
I'm gonna try to. It depends if someone opens like a transmission team. I mean, I've made it clear that like I'm willing to go like, but just like I'm not confident that I will do so. So I'm thinking like maybe AJ or if AJ like wants to
Georgia.
should we do go to? You're the ones right.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm like this.
Yeah. Tim tells me some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also some
Was an artist. She does like a bunch of backgrounds.
yeah, she's super.
Brandon super open case up. Brandon's driving here. So now.
Nice. Toki's breaking. First team in Northside history.
Nice. Who did they meet in?
The other thing I noticed about this TC is really weird other TCs is that I think there's going to be more talent.
Yeah, this is like, I think the first time where, at least the way that like, we're looking at it, we're going to choose like one.
Well,
probably more.
no, there's usually 1 or 2, but it's like 3 minutes. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 20 entries.
Be 10 rounds if it clears to.
Right, but I think.
That would be 2 rounds.
Would there be 2 runs?
Yeah, because there's 16
Okay, I
pages.
thought there were 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 runs.
Yeah.
So, what is this?
Well, I watched
One
one.
picked up 2.
Okay. Were they good? I told him to go for 2020.
I kept trying to push Christine to go for Spark against Zuckerman, since it was the last one. He went for Spark 4 times and he said,
And hopefully that city was much stupid.
yeah.
He kept filling out those rounds and saying, pick up for Spark.
Because he didn't realize he was running the TOC, because he just got the alert, like, a week ago,
Yeah.
and off the wait list. So he was just treating those tournaments like they were his last round.
Yeah, I went to I watched out rounds at NBCA on Monday, he was there. And he was so pessimistic, he's like, we're never gonna get the at-large, and we're gonna go, oh, if we do.
So many teams dropped out in this one. It is bizarre. Because last year, only one team dropped out. Period.
Growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a bunch of problems that, like, I mean, they've been from those.
Yeah. It definitely is a great tournament, but everyone talks about the TOC like it's really much of stuff's happening and great shit happening. Teams keep going except do well. And it's just it's sort of just like a test to see who gets burnt out at the end of the year and who like has extra motivation.
I guess it might be where like juniors tend to do a bit better than they.
Oh, for sure. Even if they still have something.
That's why like NBA.
For some, yeah.
Like NBA is like keeping up.
Kind of, yeah. There was only like 25 to 30 viewers on there. I didn't expect this round. So I thought people were going to be really excited for not stream.
There's also the NBA.
Green Hill's in no stream.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is kind of important because I definitely would. But Warzone was like, yeah, there's a lot of teams here. I would say maybe like 70% of schools are open streaming, which sounds like a lot, but actually isn't. Once you start to have matchups, like it ends up being like half the matchups count, and then you start to not be able to do repeats. You don't want to do repeats. I don't agree with schools. I don't agree with representation of certain schools, certain debaters, and same kind of requests. The judge also has consent to the RPG.
I don't think you did a good job with my school stuff.
I think I did too. Do you see the Chattahoochee one in the first?
No, I don't know why. I don't know why it's not there. It might still be that way, because like this one says.
I make that, but I streamed Chattahoochee before.
But if I look the link on Facebook. It's here, it's like the link on Facebook. So that happened to the NDT final stream too, but.
Did it just show up at some point?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I have like a safe recording of all of the others anyway, just in case. But it doesn't show up at like. Sorry, it's April 28th. Which is awesome.
You can come home, or you still have like things to do that are cool.
No, I moved out of Denver.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I literally finished my last year with final, and the day of that, I packed all my shit, put it in storage, and then like get up at 6 a.m.
Remember this is driving now. No, she goes to Iowa, who live in Crown, so she's transferring.
I'm a little frustrated. I couldn't stream 5 years. Especially like being in like capital, everything's not my judge wants to, like,
Yeah,
I'm strong grounds at the TOC.
Wasn't it 2 North Stars for city judge?
I judged Lane and North Star. Although I don't think this is just bizarre. Like I think I might get one round or something just does that. But all of my rounds.
I'm kind of surprised by that, like, if you're in your school set, really,
But also like at this point there's like,
oh, yeah.
like the boys out of 18, so like
Yeah. Wow. Okay, one for the one outside.
I don't know. I don't know. They're facing Boulder and Scott though. Other monsters.
Okay.
Both teams are good though. Like, I might have played this week after the
We debated
this one.
no, we really got into it. What was what was that?
I mean, when you show farm, it's pretty easy to work out. Right. Well, they don't even have to say, like, they just say, like, you know, if you do the app in a world that we don't have, then we solve stuff the app doesn't solve. And then they just, like, point this out.
We're crossway. Probably gonna see everyone's close.
Yeah. It's definitely such a different style of thing that, like, sometimes it's really hard to like conceptualize.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, what's for politics, yeah, so.
that's something that doesn't
That's something we should figure out tonight.
I know. Especially when there's 2 teams right now.
Yeah, especially if they win too, then we'll be.
I see that we don't I'm probably gonna just stream it.
Are you seriously? Yeah, they came out normal. Yeah. It's a good show. They do this one.
I feel like the other thing I'm watching is I watching my master computer everybody.
Oh, really?
So when I'm student for that, see it, I'm not clumpy.
It doesn't have you two. Why you do that?
Yeah. Because I'm saying, I have my own audio. So I thought it would be, and I'm just.
So, when you try to like record someone, it's like a fantasy game. Yeah. For one. Just for you guys. Yeah, we have to try. So we're gonna try. So that's an amazing game. That's like we do.
Oh,
So we choose to.
is it the same order for each round?
Yeah, so we have the same team structure.
Oh, so it's essentially combining the teams.
Yeah.
Get most with.
Yeah, so you get a certain amount of points for the ballot, and then you get a certain amount for each.
I see that. And when you did make that around.
Actually, yeah.
That's a strange.
That's because Asia is in.
Education topic. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, in our, oh, definitively.
Yeah.
Just not as much as the app, because you should have things like the reasons. I think he understood when he recorded it, as long as there was no deficit against that, so it's just a general. Because he was a student. We were just like, trying to beat on the agencies. Power first. Right, and we were just like, it actually went on that perm shields was the reason. We were just like, the reason is that was 2020 is like, it wouldn't look like Trump was spearheading the sort of process of race restriction. And so if you looked at it like coercive pressure, then you wouldn't get like coercive pressure. And so the perm that they have is just that like you should do the perm threat and then do the app as acquiescence to the threat. And so we just had to win the next in terms of or that caused some overlap of a certain behavior and we won like 0.1%. Trump doing immigration stuff, so it's not. We had a car that was like USA at the time of Trump. Yeah, they wrote this app that like it prioritized Indian applicants, like Indian and white-based applicants, it prioritized them.
It's a super annoying thing. We're like per country.
Oh yeah, it just says reduce restrictions on per country limits. India and they have the process, even though like all their currency. Okay, I'm in.
Are we all ready? I voted F. I thought it was somewhat of a frustrating decision because I think that the risk of the F is next to zero. As the TOR kind of explains it, it's a linear risk of solving some nebulous issues of health, but I think that the risk of the DA is zero. And here's kind of how I sorted through the debate. I'll start on the counterplan. That's the first place I looked. The second deficit I think the TOR goes for is contrived. I agree with you there. I think the more problematic one is the first deficit, which is that even if the funding and infrastructure and the health apparatus is completely fixed at a state level, there's still a risk that some immigrants will perceive it as a risk of their own to go to health facilities. And I don't think that I agree with you that they do drop this counterplan, but I think this deficit is in the 2AC on other places in the flow, that the fear of going to hospitals is still kind of a minimal solvency deficit that the 2NR doesn't grapple with. There are some ways that I think you could perhaps add some planks to resolve this. You could have the states issue something that says that they will keep all that public health information secret, that they won't disclose it to Trump. I don't buy, I don't know that this deficit is great, and I'll talk about another way that I think you could frame this as more of an advantage counterplan than a process counterplan that I think would have solved it. But I do think they're winning the smallest risk that immigrant populations would be more likely to access health services in a plan than the counterplan. The disad, and this is where I spend most of my time thinking about the debate. The first argument that I struggle with is this idea that the plan would take a year. I just don't have a 2NR answer to this. I think it zeroes out your link. There are bigger issues with this though. Like I think that you have to win a lot of pieces to get to the links you're going for in the 2NR. You have to win that there's some sort of resistance to this decision that spills up to the Supreme Court. You have to win some sort of like timing or a framing argument of how long that takes. You have to win that throughout that process, Trump gets attached to it. And like, this just is like, I think you're never grappling with the mechanism of the AF in a way that I can look at look at the 2AR and be like, there's a risk of a link. I actually don't think there's a risk. And I think that it's possible that if the ruling takes a year and you're right that it like gets contested up to the Supreme Court, like what is the duration of time that takes for you to win a link? Is he even in office? The 2AR posits this question, and I just don't have the answers to those, and I think the burden should be on you to do that. I think there's an easy way to fix that problem. The push earlier in the debate should have been that he campaigned on immigration, but he also campaigned on fixing the courts. And the Gorsuch argument, I think, is superficial. I think the better argument to make is that he promised that he would fix the courts writ large, which includes lower level courts, which is why he's packing the courts with conservative justices, which means that the platform that he campaigned on isn't just at the Supreme Court level. It's like fixing the American judicial system, which the plan would get tied to because these lower courts are also perceived as Trump. But like that's not the direction you took this in the debate. There are other thumpers that I think also are problematic with the link, but the stuff I said like right there, I think literally puts the risk of the DA to zero. The second part of this is like the link you do go for, the 2NR. And I'm not really sure why he's more likely to get blamed by the base than he would fight the decision. Like, I just don't think there's a piece of evidence. I do agree with you that the base cares about immigration, and I think that's the reason that he would just blame the courts. And I think that even if I look at the link that you go for, I don't know that I could explain to the AF why he's more likely to, in one immigration decision that doesn't go his way, get blamed for that versus saying like the courts ruled in a way that I didn't support. The second part of this is I'm not even sure that you're winning a huge risk of a lash out. I think you need to deal with this argument, this 1AR piece of evidence that the base actually wants him to look inward and that he wouldn't, he's an anti-interventionist president. I think the 2NR, like superficially, like you do have the top level, like he lashes out, you extend like the few countries that are in the 1NC piece of evidence, but I don't think you explicitly answer this 1AR piece of evidence that, like in the abstract, in a moment of desperation, he would lash out. I think their ev is pretty good that that's not true, and that his foreign policy is one to appease the base, he would actually become more inward. So that are some of like the foundational issues I have with the 2NR and the disad. Let me see what else. I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure it gets tied to the plan. Case debate. I think that AF wins this circumvention spillover argument. I think that there's like next to nothing to the AF. I wish you would have made a presumption argument. I literally think that this debate comes down to like 0.1 risk that there are a few people who have better health services versus 0 risk of a dishab. And they're winning it on the margins. A lot of the 2AR on the case page is just new. And what didn't make sense to me is like what you need to zero out the risk of this disad is like the cards you're having the 1AR read at the bottom are not the difference between you winning and losing this debate. And if that time would have been reappropriated to just like more robustly defending this advantage, I think the decision would have been quicker for you all. But I just don't know that you, I think the 2NR is pretty good on asking a lot of questions the 1AR doesn't have answers to, like if disease is happening outside the United States, why is the US key? There were a couple of other like burnout questions that I just, ACA gaps, 27 million people uninsured. I just can't see those answers in the 1AR. I can't draw a line back to that. So I'm very uncomfortable. If there was even like, if I felt like there was a risk of a link, I think you lose this debate. That's how low I think you're solving the AF. Or a risk of presumption. I think I would have sat there for a while thinking about like, you've done such a good job on the case debate. I just don't think you're winning a link to the DA. And I feel like that was a 1AR strategic error of just reading a bunch of ev you didn't need, and that time could have been spent answering like 3 or 4 of these like pretty easy arguments, I think, for you all to reconcile with. And so those were kind of my global thoughts. The last thing that I wish you would have done that would have given me some pause is like you have 2 pieces of this debate that I think are really interesting. You make this argument on the case page that we have 27 million people who are uninsured. And that even in a world where the AF happens, like that doesn't get resolved. I think a 2NR of like, instead of thinking about this as an agent counterplan, thinking of it as an advantage counterplan, and being like, look, we've agreed in this debate that it's between 3 and 13 million people that get excluded from the health system that the AF solves. We solve for 27 million people, even if it's not the same people who would be classified under the AF, which means we solve more of the counterplan, or more of the advantage than the AF.
What is the permutation? So what encompasses that?
And that's, I think that's, hang on a sec. Yeah, you might be right. The permutation, let me go to the counterplan real quick. Yeah, okay. And I think that the last thing is you all were really late breaking in realizing the trick to this AF and the court mechanism, and I think it really kind of messed up the global strategy, and I think it was pretty clear early on that they were like a step ahead in big chunks of this debate. I thought you all debated phenomenally. Like every time I see you all debate, I'm just so impressed. And But I look back at the one I'd seen that just like a lot of it doesn't reconcile the mechanism that they're using. And so some of the mistakes I think were a little bit self-inflicted in this debate.
So for the 1AR on case, did you flow like a lot of answers to the block, the 2 and C on like the disease advantage in particular?
I think I had 2 answers in the 1AR, not much. And that's why it's like a frustrating debate for me, because I literally think there's I don't even know if the app goes beyond like we solve for health and like some people having health is good. I think you have almost zeroed out the app.
What would it have taken to zero out the app, given that they zeroed out the descent?
30 seconds on presumption, just saying like you give some people health is not a reason to vote app. I just think there's literally zero risk of this dissent, and that's kind of.
And there's not literally zero risk.
Right, there's not literally zero risk. I can look at the app and say people get health, and I'm comfortable with that outweighing the status quo.
Okay. The first part of the link debate, I'm kind of confused. Even if the app takes a year, why wouldn't that also trigger lash out in a year?
And that might be true. I think the argument that I'm really concerned about is the fact that it just happens at a lower level and it never spills up.
Yeah.
And I think the burden is on you to explain how the fight goes higher. I think the argument is the lower court decision takes a year, but if it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, how long does that take, is what I'm trying to say. So like if the plan gets announced within the next year, when does the Supreme Court hear it? Right. When do they rule? Is Trump still in office when all of those things are done? And I think the burden is on you to answer all of those.
Mm-hmm.